as always with this this board, there are different faces each time, so it'd be good for everybody to introduce themselves just briefly. So first of all, are there any apologies? Anybody got a note of them, Lee? Oh, you've got them, Adam.
Great, turn that on. There we go. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we've got quite a list of apologies for this morning's meeting, so this might take a couple of minutes. So the first one we've got is from the Chief Executive, Thomas Glenn, Councillor Peter Barrett, Barbara Renton, Jackie Pepper, Serge Kabamba from Scottish Fire and Rescue, Michael Wright from Scottish Enterprise, Douglas McLaren from the Scottish Government, Yvonne Boyd from Skills Development Scotland, Tom Leonard from Police Scotland, and finally Paul Rayner from NHS Tayside, but I believe Julie Mackay may be substituting for Paul. And that's it, okay.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So as there are a few new faces, and it's good to welcome Caroline here as my co-chair of this meeting, and she's passed it to me to do this time because I believe she's to leave to go to another meeting at 11 o'clock. So we'll just start with you, Caroline, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Grant. Yeah, it's I'm in week 4, so and Grant and I met yesterday, so it was absolutely Grant's turn to chair this one. But no, I'm delighted to be here. We've been looking internally at PCABs and what we can do to make sure the voice of the third sector is heard. And I've had the pleasure of meeting lots of colleagues throughout Perth and Kinross Council, third sector organisations, and of course our internal teams. So I'm looking forward to meeting more of you from the partnership and just really understanding more about how this partnership delivers against its outcomes in terms of, improving things for the community in Perth and Kinross. So short and sweet, Grant, but here and open to having any meetings outside of this one with some of the partners. Thanks.
Thanks, Caroline. Fiona, do you want to give? Next, Fiona Robertson.
Are we moving on to the minute, Chair? Did you want to take the...
No, it's just to introduce yourself to people who don't know you, Fiona.
Oh, apologies. Yes, sorry. Oh dear, you can tell it's Friday. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Fiona Robertson. I'm a Head of Service in Perth and Kinross Council. I think I know most people on the call, but not all. I know we have a colleague of Emma's from NHS Public Health team. Sarah is joined the meeting to observe this morning. My responsibility in the council includes community planning and the community empowerment agenda, amongst other things. So nice to see those of you who I don't know.
Thanks, Fiona. John?
Hi folks, John Duff. I'm one of the councillors covering the Highland Ward, Highland Perthshire area of Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Emma?
Thank you. Emma Fletcher, Director of Public Health at NHS Tayside. And as I say, as Fiona's introduced, Sarah Noble-Klein is here, Interim Directorate Manager for Public Health, and is observing predominantly the work I'm doing, but the wider context in which we're engaging. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Veronica?
Hi all, I'm Veronica Lynch. I'm Vice Principal for External Engagement at UHI Perth. So I'm actually here representing Margaret Cook, Principal at UHI Perth, who's unable to attend today, but also happen to chair the Local Employability Partnership. So I'm happy to give an update on that when it comes to the cost of living pressures item as well. Nice to see everybody.
Okay, thanks, Veronica. And I'm testing my eyesight to read the small icons up here, but I recognise Sheena, if you want to introduce yourself, Sheena.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sheena Devlin. I'm Executive Director of Education and Children's Services in Perth and Kinross Council. Nice to see you all.
Thanks. Jacob?
Hi everyone, I'm Jacob Dudgeon, the new Community Planning Officer, simply here just to observe, but nice to meet you all.
Thanks. And Julie?
Good morning, I'm Julie Mackay, Area Service Manager for the Scottish Ambulance Service for Perth and Perthshire. I'm here just to fill in for Paul Rayner today. He's unable to be on the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. And Sarah?
Morning everybody, just here to observe shadowing Emma Fletcher, work for NHS Tayside, so thank you very much for allowing me access and nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Sarah. David, back in the room. Yeah.
For communities, work with Fiona around community planning.
Hi, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Lee Haxton, Community Planning Team Leader. Jacob is one of my new staff members, joined us in January, so I've asked him to sit in on this one to get a sense of how the board works. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dave Cuthbert. I'm a councillor for Kinross Shire and an independent member.
Thanks. I'm Grant Lang, Leader of Perth and Kinross Council.
All right. Hi, I'm Carol Hendry. I work in Perth and Kinross Council and support Claire with the delivery of the Child Poverty Action Plan, but also involved in transformation and change.
Hi there, I'm Claire Mailer, Executive Lead for Strategic Planning and Transformation with the Council.
Good morning, Graham Binney, Partnership Superintendent with Tayside Division in the Police.
And thanks, Adam, just to finish it.
Sorry, Chair. Adam Taylor from Committee Services.
Well, thanks everybody, and thanks everybody for attending here today. So we'll just go straight on to the minutes from the. Well, first of all, any declarations of interest? I don't think we'll have that. Everybody's got an interest in what we're doing here. So we'll move on to the minutes of the last board meeting on the 18th of November. Can we agree the minutes? Agreed. Do we have any matters arising from the minutes? Okay, thanks. So there's no matters that will not be covered further on in the agenda. So we'll move on to paper 5, which is the cost of living update, and I'll ask Claire to introduce this.
You want me to kick off with an update? I've got a couple of updates. I suppose a couple of updates to give from our point of view. First of all, child poverty. Carol's got a bit of an update to give in terms of the anti-poverty task force, and we've got a couple of slides to cover on that. And we were also going to give some a brief update in terms of spend on cosy spaces. So I'll kickstart with child poverty. Everybody will recall that the Child Poverty Action Plan report was approved in November. We moved at that point to a 4-year delivery plan, very much aligned with the Scottish Government Child Poverty Delivery Plan, Best Start, Bright Futures. Key areas that we've got of focus within our delivery plan are supporting parents to enter, sustain and progress in work. To maximise support available to enter, sustain and progress in work, supporting the next generation to survive and thrive, and to deliver a one family, one council, whole family approach to connecting children and family to the help and support that they need to mitigate and move beyond poverty. we've got a multi-agency action group, and we've got many representatives from the CPP, or certainly agencies sitting within that group. A detailed action plan, which many of you will all be aware of. Work is progressing on the actions that we agreed within the plan, and one of the key actions within there was the scorecard, the children's scorecard, informed by children and families experiencing poverty and their lived experience. So we have got that baseline assessment and a number of measures within the overall sort of monitoring framework. The work, very much as you're all aware, is linked to the LOIP and indeed the corporate plan. Our child poverty coordinator delivered a presentation to the CIPIOG a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we can share that with everybody post-meeting today, which gives probably a more detailed update. More recently, in terms of work that we've been undertaking, is we've updated our locality profiles. Those are the kind of the detailed information in terms of poverty, employment levels, deprivation levels across each of our ward areas. We held an elected member workshop a couple of weeks ago, really doing a bit of a drill down in terms of what action needs to be taken at very much at that kind of locality ward level. And also more recently, we've held a locality workshop in Highland, Perthshire, involving staff and teams from across the partners, and I think that was fairly well represented by a range of different delegates. So we had good spread of representation: education, social work, NHS, social prescribing, employability, transport planning, rep from Police Scotland. So it was a good session up in Aberfeldy, continuing the work that we're doing there to really focus on child poverty. The group were really challenged in terms of what the tangible actions were that we needed to undertake within Highland, Perthshire. As we all know, we've got some specific challenges there round and about employment, precarious employment, certainly, childcare, transport, and indeed housing. So a fairly good representation at that group. We will write up the outcomes from that, and again we can share it, but certainly some real focus. We did the drill down in terms of the numbers of children in Highland, Perthshire experiencing poverty, ensuring that targeted approach that we talked about, that whole family targeted approach. So that was, I think, a fairly positive workshop. Other work that we've been undertaking in terms of, say, Highland, Perthshire, Thomas, Glenn and myself met with the Scottish Government a couple of weeks ago, sort of certainly looking to tap into some potential accelerator funding and support from the Scottish Government in terms of the work. So a work in progress, and we can keep you updated on that. We also met with a rep from the Hunter Foundation to have a similar conversation. So we're sort of pulling in as much as we can in terms of really supporting traction in Highland, Perthshire, to ensure a real focused whole family approach. And Grant, we might want to talk about again potentially some decisions next week in terms of the budget around some more dedicated support in Highland, Perthshire. So yeah, generally good work. Our Child Poverty Coordinator and team also recently hosted a national event with child poverty leads, doing some sort of benchmarking good practice work. So quite a lot going on in the child poverty arena. Do you want me just to move on? Have you got anything to share, or do you just want me to give a brief update in terms of? Right, okay. Has that been shared with everybody? No. So what we will do, so just very briefly in terms of some of the wider sort of cost of living, I've got a little report that David's team kindly prepared, and we will share this. Apologies we didn't get it out prior to the meeting, but we will share it after today. You will all recall that funding was agreed over the course of the last year to support the cost of living crisis. Initially, £320,000 was made available for community groups and organisations to apply for. This was extended by Council in December last year, and a further £100,000 was added to that pot. So in total, we had £420,000 available for the purposes to really support communities and community groups in the creation and establishment of warm spaces, food and warm home packs. David and Lee's team So I mean, they have all the credit here for all of this work, met weekly to ensure that applications could be dealt with swiftly and quickly. And we had a really good geographical spread of applications, I think, which was really encouraging. All of this was not concentrated or focused in one area. £170,000 was for the costs of warm spaces was distributed to 92 successful applicants, 250,000 for the costs of food support, and warm home packs was distributed to 85 successful applicants. And we have had really positive feedback, and I can see Lee nodding there, really positive feedback from the groups that received the monies. So such as, you know, as the high cost of energy hits home, we found out that warm spaces have been well used with anything from 6 to 25 customers coming in each Thursday. So that was up at Letham St Mark's. Very overwhelmed with the warm space. On average, numbers of attendees are 40 to 50 on a Tuesday and a Thursday. That was from the Perth Welfare Society. Pleased with the popularity of the project, good attendance at the various hubs. That was out at Kettins. And one uptake had been relatively poor. A few people have popped in to see what it's about, and I'm sure that David and Lee would probably agree that I think the wider benefits of the warm spaces hasn't just been the cosy spaces, but really connecting people to the support that's available, but also connecting people to each other. So I think the kind of byproduct in terms of addressing social isolation has been absolutely key. Huge beneficiaries in terms of the warm packs and the food feedback, reaching across all 16 to 17-year-old communities and more widely. So that certainly was through Perth UHI. Energy support scheme proceeding, demand has increased. Lots of, you know, feedback in terms of attendance at Christmas lunches and whatnot. So some really, really good feedback. A good timeline. I'll not go through the timeline in terms of the delivery, but Lee and David have pulled that together. And we had good coordination through the Anti-Poverty Task Force in terms of the festive shutdown. Some additional funds were put onto the Perth card, which Carol might touch upon later. We also pushed out food vouchers and were very much supported by Police Scotland, Culture PK, and indeed the communities team. So a really good collaborative effort in terms of first-time responders, ensuring that we reached out to give support. So we will get more detailed monitoring, and a lot of people are asking for more monitoring information. The original panel will analyse the data that was gathered to create a more detailed report regarding the impact of the funds. So the so what question, what has the impact been? But it is clear from the initial feedback that the need does continue to increase, and we will obviously need to consider what further support we can provide on an ongoing basis. So we will share that brief update with you following today's meeting. And I think, Grant, I don't know, will I hand over to back, because we've got an update on the Anti-Poverty Task Force. Don't know if you've got others you want to do first.
Thanks. Just at this stage, I'd like to hear from some of the other partners what they've been doing. But it's not all council based this, so I'd like to hear if anybody wants to chip in with anything that their organisations have been doing to alleviate the cost of living crisis. So I've got a note here from Lee that Fiona has had an update from Tom Leonard from Police Scotland. So that's let Graham off the hook there. So we'll hand over to Fiona for an update from Tom, please.
And thank you, Chair. And I can do that, but Graham, I didn't realise that you were attending this morning when I received Tom's email, so I'll defer to you if you would rather take this one. What would you like to do?
Thanks, Fiona. I'll think, I don't have it in front of me. I saw Tom's email that he replied to you. I think we're always challenged with cost of living because we are really stretched with our response to our core functions. So we've been challenged with that and had those conversations with Claire and Fiona. So all we can probably do is support the local authorities best we can. We've had a challenge with, we've tried to go nationally and tried to see if we can make poverty, especially child poverty, a marker on our national vulnerable persons database. With the clunk of a national system, we haven't managed to do that yet. So I think we are best placed to support whether it's physically or virtually or whatever way it can be, with just some of the leadership that Claire and team are providing to this in whatever way we can, rather than trying anything innovative ourselves, which may be destined to failure, because we're trying desperately to make sure we do our other functions to the best of our ability. So thanks, Fiona. Was there anything else in Tom's email that was specific?
I think just specifically, Graham, I think the other thing that he, and I know you know about this because you've been involved in it, but there's so much going on, is just the role of Police Scotland with distributing emergency food and fuel packs over Christmas. So that was for individuals who just, found themselves in crisis when, over Christmas, New Year time, when getting help from other sources was potentially a bit tricky. And Tom just sort of wanted to flag, I think there was a couple of things really. One was just about, notwithstanding the challenges that you've said there, Graham, about just broader awareness of cost of living crisis amongst your officers, your teams. And there's been some follow-up, I think, in terms of further training and support for staff about, understanding impact of poverty, the specific role of police officers, what they can do that only they can do, multi-agency relationships, etc., etc. So I actually thought that was a really strong example of, different, whichever seat you hold on the CPP partnership, if you like, we've all got a collective responsibility here, and just working across boundaries to achieve that. But that was it from Tom, Chair. Thanks, Graham.
Okay, thanks, Fiona and Graham. Are there any of the other partners we'd like to speak? Yes, Emma.
Thank you. So just to flag, our focus of work has been on income maximisation referral pathways, and these have been established within primary care, secondary care and universal healthcare services, so maternity health visiting, family nurse partnerships, and that's really to ensure that people are accessing all the financial support that they can. We also have a dedicated on-site welfare and benefit advice service provided to inpatients in the Carsview Centre, and that has evaluated very well with positive feedback from inpatients and staff. We do regular dissemination of communications about actions to mitigate the impact of cost of living through our communications to all the workforce, 13,000 employees in the NHS Tayside, so a proportion of whom clearly will be Perth and Kinross residents. And also we have the advice centre established in Nine Wells, and working with partners to make sure that people who are attending inpatient services in that locus can access support. So I'll pause there. I'm sure the team are doing a lot more in other aspects, and if Sarah wants to add anything else later in the meeting after other contributions, then please do, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Veronica?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll maybe give an update on behalf of the Local Employability Partnership, and then also maybe specifically on UHI Perth, some of the work that we've been doing there too. So from the LEP in the first instance, so we're currently developing the employability strategy, and we'll have a very big focus on anti-poverty agenda within that. And as part of that, the development of that strategy, we're engaging with employability providers and service users to get a better insight into what the services that we can focus on, the support there, particularly recognising the impact that employability can have in reduction of poverty across the piece. We're continuing to deploy the No One Left Behind and the Young Persons Guarantee and Parental Employment Support Funds that we administer on behalf of the Scottish Government. We're looking at much more outreach delivery, just given that then reduces any travel costs and travel burdens on behalf of any participants in any of the programmes that we're delivering. We're engaged in the anti-poverty task force and the child poverty action plan as well. So I think collectively partners are really focused on addressing any challenges that our potential service users face there. So on behalf of UHI Perth as well, we were successful in getting some of the funding that Claire was describing in terms of the creation of the warm space, and we'll have that facility open for our students and community members across the whole time that our buildings are open. But because we run Academy for Sport and Wellbeing, that's open pretty much all the time. We have distributed lots of food parcels for students. We actually managed to raise some external funding to develop what we call the big project that basically provides a kind of no stigma available food and clothing service for our students, and that's gone down extremely well. So through our development trust, we've reached out to a number of our philanthropy partners to support that. And also on behalf of Local Employability Partnership and the DWP, we've delivered some skills academies for employability as well to address that poverty agenda. So thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. Caroline?
Hi there. Yeah, just in terms of the third sector, there's been huge demand, as you can imagine, from beneficiaries looking for support from third sector organisations, and there's sort of a wider challenge around third sector resilience and wellbeing, which we are picking up a project with the third sector around. And coupled with that, the core cost challenge and the funding cuts. So the service demand's high, the funding cuts are there, so we're helping them to kind of manage that and work that through. In terms of minority communities, we've seen an increase in the number of people who are asking for emergency support. I think this week we've had 12 inquiries so far to support families who have no access to food at all. And we're working with some of the local business community to support that in emergency situations. And there's been a great response to that. So we need to work with the third sector equalities groups and make sure that that's all tied together, and can continue to support some of these individuals who have no recourse to funds. And asylum seekers in hotels are receiving £8 a week. But there's been no increase there despite the increased cost of living. So those are some of the main things that we are seeing. In terms of what we are doing internally at PCAVS, our mental health and wellbeing hub provides surplus food distributed to all service users. There's fruit and veg, surplus fruit and veg that's offered out to people, and we provide food bank vouchers and support with money concerns. Our carers hub, carers calling in crisis, the telephone service has increased with the number of carers asking for support with cost of living, and we are working alongside Perth and Kinross Council to come up with some strategies around that. Internally, we've provided a one-off cost of living payment to all of our employees, which is £250 that will be paid in the February salary. And we've introduced an employee assistance programme that covers finance support, including budgeting help and legal and debt support. And we're also undertaking a peer review across the whole organisation. So that's us. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Caroline. This is just a question that arises from myself, because from what I've heard, but just looking, the date of the last meeting was the 18th of November, and I can see that everybody is doing a lot of good work in their own area. But I was just wondering how how much conversation there are between the different partners, because we're now in the 24th of February, and so that's the winter has passed from our last meeting to this meeting. And I was wondering, is there a lot of interaction between all the various partners as they move through the winter, to make sure that there's nobody slipping through the net and there's no duplication? So it's just something I was interested to know. Emma.
Yeah, I would reflect that that I'm sure that is happening within teams at an operational level. And I know that the task force is one of those functions, but also the working groups within the CPP. But apologies, because of the kind of the strategic oversight nature of this meeting, it's not something I would have to take that away and specifically ask the teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks. Graham.
Thanks, Chair. I was reflecting there when I was trying to respond on behalf of Tom. My instinct, I suppose, in placing is always to look at this as a prevention area, but I probably failed to mention some of the interventions. And just thinking about what Emma's saying, there's two bits of work that we're constantly involved in, and that's recognising the impact on poverty, which then takes people either into the criminal justice system or into acute health services when they're in distress. So we are working constantly with Carsview and other areas of NHS to try and get better at recognising the difference between distress and diagnosed mental health conditions, because we're displacing demand right across the health and social care partnership with people who need assertive outreach and otherwise might end up in a police cell or Carsview. So that's constant work. The other area which I think is worth highlighting, Perth, is with the problems we see in the criminal justice system and the backlog of poverty is a reason for people to be involved in crime. It's going to take a while for there to be court-mandated support. So the complex vulnerabilities coordinator that we have in Perth is trying to identify that outreach for people who otherwise might take months or years to get it through the criminal justice system. So there are quite a lot of interventions going on with health and with criminal justice partners to try and intervene when poverty may be a contributory factor for entering these two systems.
Thanks, Graham. Claire wants to come in.
I think you ask a really good question, Grant, in terms of the kind of the coordination, the collaboration across partners. I think it's a huge and complex area. Cost of living's affecting a huge number of households and lots of services and agencies involved. I think we have definitely improved over the course of this winter and had a much more coordinated approach. We had, as you know, the winter cost of living planning group, I think it's what it was called, or the operational group. And I think there has been some good liaison across partners. I think the task force is definitely helping and pushing us in the right direction. However, I would say that there's more to be done. And I think your other point in terms of, right, what's the plan for the year ahead? And I think, you know, yeah, we're maybe just in February, but next winter will soon be upon us. So I think kind of getting our sort of ducks in a row for the planning for through the summer, holiday hunger, but also into next winter, I think will be case. So I think we just need to continue to work at it. And I think there are probably some really good examples of, you know, partnership working, collaborative working, but there's no doubt that there will be some gaps in there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I think what brings it home is about planning for next year is when I'm sitting doing the budget, or when we're sitting doing the budget, different groups, that we've got to plan for finance and what's going to happen next year. And that's probably why I start thinking about next winter, but also through the summer, because you don't want to lose these spaces where people are coming. It's helping their mental health, not just to keep warm. Even if the heating isn't on, they'll still come to meet people. So.
David, do you want to give a brief update in terms of food insecurity? Apologies, I forgot to do that in my wee update.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Obviously, partners have touched on food. It's been one of the key issues over winter. The council, through its food insecurity fund, has supported food banks since this time last year. And in terms of a number of groups, it's 37 projects across Perth and Kinross, and that was 236 £100,000. Now, some of that was for food, some of that was for equipment to build their capacity, some of that was to train staff and volunteers and things like food hygiene. So it's building them so they can be more independent, if you like, and more resilient for when we hit the winter months when there is more demand. There was £40,000 to Perth Food Bank, and we always have a bit of a call round just as we get into the winter months and ask where are the food banks and the larders at. Do they need additional support? I mean, Perth Food Bank basically felt like they had really good relationships with housing, with welfare rights, with CAB, that all referral routes were correct. So, good example of partnership working there. Just generally, they are reporting, all the food banks reporting that demand has been up over winter. Donations, unfortunately, are down from members of the public because people have got less. Also, supermarkets are donating less because they're tightening up their supply chains themselves. For Christmas, the social work teams and housing teams had emergency packs similar to what the police had. And as we've discussed about, trying to get into more preventative space, we've started working with, there's an NHS worker, Emma, who does a program called Community Cook It, which is kind of cooking on a budget. 19 individuals with a range of community groups and services, they've been trained. So actually we're trying to start rolling it out a little bit more. So.
Thanks, David. Are there any other contributions on this paper? I can see Emma.
Yes, sorry. I'm just wondering about kind of systematising your last reflections, and I wonder if it's an action for all of us to take away and just write a one-page briefing to share in advance of the next meeting, with reflections over the past few months with our key successes, key challenges, and our opportunities for going forward, because it might be helpful, given that with the strategic leaders around this, to know where our teams have had those challenges that we can air and think about, actually, let's make that better going forward. I don't know if that's of appetite or interest to anyone else or benefit, or if that's being captured elsewhere in the system.
I think everybody seems to be taking a note of just what you've said, Emma, so I'll take the fact that everybody's noting it down, both in here and on screen, that I think everybody thinks that's a sensible idea and a sensible way forward. Unless everybody happy to follow up on that. Okay, Emma, thanks for the suggestion. Thanks. If that's everybody content with what how we're going to move forward, Carol, do you have an update before we move on to the next paper?
I've got a presentation, so Adam, if you want to, and I'll promise I'll whiz through it. I'll not go into too much detail around it, and I can share it if Adam's not already done so with the people attending. I will, I promise. I promise.
Whoa, ouch.
Just give me a nudge and I can turn our mic off if you. Oh yeah, yeah. Who's got total control of the mic? If you get a nudge from Grant, you just.
I'm happy just to.
You could start.
Yeah. I'll just start giving people. I don't know if people know all about the background of the Anti-Poverty Task Force. It kind of commenced and it was approved through the council in September last year, and it came with some money the committee report did attach some money, which we're talking about today, for cosy spaces, etc. So I'll try not to cover all what we've already covered. Oh, yeah, there we go. And it was just really about, because of the partners involved in this, it includes business partners as well as third sector, health, council members as well. It was about unblocking. It's not about duplication of effort. It's really about where as a collective can we unblock the issues that are impacting on people in poverty. So the first gives just a wee oversight of that. So we can just go to the next slide, whoever's in charge of that. Yeah, and again, these were the principles, and you'll all be familiar with these principles. It was to have an independent in thought and action, and attributing actions to actual partners to take forward. It's about sharing information and talking about making sure that we're getting the right people involved at the right time, and sharing information so to reduce that duplication of effort, but also to help look innovatively on how we can tackle as a collective the cost of living crisis, which everybody talked about this morning. That was the first kind of task, but we need to look more at the longer impact. Sorry, so Gareth Ruddock from Giraffe is the current chair, and we've also got Professor John McKendrick as an advisor on the group, who is knowledgeable on all things around poverty, and actually we make that connection through the child poverty group as well. Have the next slide, please. So progress so far, it is still in its infancy. We're still all trying to find our feet, to be fair to say. And what the big lunch, although there was some probably negative feedback through social media, but don't always believe what you see in social media, but actually facilitated a lot of conversation around the table, offers of being volunteers, being trustees to various organisations, and we're following these connections up. One of the business lead, Mike Robinson, he's been liaising with the local farmers to deliver fresh produce, which is turned within Perth, that we're going to get turned into meals. However, that has now become a national ask of the NFU, and they're planning this a day, I think it's after the coronation on May this year. There's a couple of other things that are in early planning stages with the local businesses around energy screens, like private grids, as well as skills development too. So there is a lot of connections with the Skills Development Scotland as well. And a more coordinated approach around Cash First and CAB have secured funding from the Trussell Trust to take some aspects of this forward, and it was agreed that Jane from CAB would take a lead on that. And of course, continue to build relationships. Again, as I said, Professor John McKendrick's been given like a high-level overview of the national priorities, which we've been kind of linking in with what we need to do on a local level. And we've talked about the cost of living already today. The Perth gift card, there was some work before Christmas to get supermarkets signed into using the cash first as a cash first approach, and been quite successful getting local co-ops and ScotMid involved in signing up to accepting the cards, as well as there's been little other projects about transport, particularly up in the Letham area, and we're kind of working on mapping the landscape. As we all said this morning, it's a messy and complex landscape, so we're trying to understand that to kind of reduce all that kind of potential overlaps, and developing a comms plan for the task force. And we had a meeting yesterday on how best to take that forward. Next slide. So what we've agreed within the task force is to sort of break it down into key themes. Key themes are down on the left-hand side there. I'll not go through them all, but these are particular issues that have been brought up, particularly around what we've identified through child poverty, but also on the right-hand side is the action plans that we're going to be developing to take these forward. And the relevant experts will be invited to the task force to give an overview of what they know, what's already been progressed, what are the barriers, and how can the Anti-Poverty Task Force help break down these barriers. Next slide, please. I'm trying to be quick. So the next step, as I said, task force, we continue to influence across the public-private sectors. We had an overview of employability, and interesting that Veronica mentioned the LEP, so there was representative gave an update on what was happening there and some of the barriers. As I said, we're going to get the experts in the room to actually talk about what the barriers are. And so I think the next theme for the board was to be the childcare element. So, is that quick?
I was very impressed. Thanks. And I think with the Anti-Poverty Task Force, it moved into action really quickly, and it was sort of, we were fighting fires left, right and centre as we had to. But I think moving forward, we now have learnt and we'll be able to plan, because this problem is not going to disappear anytime soon. And some of the things will maybe not as successful as others, and we'll be able to concentrate. So I'm convinced that the Anti-Poverty Task Force, working with all our other partners here as well, will be able to give a more concerted and targeted approach to where we direct our limited funding to help the most people. It's just been pointed out to me, I was just reminded there that across Scotland and the UK, many councils are having a minute's silence at 11 o'clock today to mark the unfortunate, obviously, disastrous start in the Ukraine war. Here at PKC, we've been very supportive of the Ukrainian people, and we have obviously in all the speeches when we decided to pause our twinning with the city of Pskov in Russia, we were very clear that we had no argument with the people of Pskov. It was the actions of their government. So if everybody's happy to join, that we'll just have a minute's silence at 11 o'clock. I'll intervene on whoever's speaking at that time and tell them it's 11 o'clock. We'll have a minute's silence if everybody's happy to do that. Thanks. So Lee, we'll move on to paper 5 about the strategic risk on the implementation of the LOIP.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a short report in your papers for today's meeting, setting out the context of risk management for the Community Planning Partnership in delivering the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan, and it touches on the statutory footing of the LOIP and the recommendations around risk management in the national guidance that Scottish Government have produced. There's a workshop originally planned, as it says in the papers, for the 20th of February. That's now been postponed and is taking place on the 22nd of March. That'll need to focus in the main probably on two key issues. Firstly, what is the risk associated with delivering the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan and the actions within it, especially when an action relies on multi-agency working, when there's more than one partner involved. And secondly, what is it about multi-agency working in general that can result in risk So be useful to ponder those points as we move towards the workshop at the end of March. So board's asked to do two things in relation to this paper: to agree that the Executive Officer Group will lead on the development of a risk profile and bring that to board at their next meeting on the 21st of April, and to do their very best to ensure that there's a strong senior officer representation at the workshop on the 22nd of March. Thanks.
Thanks, Lee. Do we have any questions for Lee on the report? Fiona.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say briefly, I think listening to the discussion around and your question about how effective is the day-to-day or are the day-to-day working links between different CPP partners on cost of living work, which is such an important priority for all of us at the moment. And one of the reasons why we think this workshop is important is it is about teasing out, the what we're doing and what are the inherent risks and issues around some of the things in the LOIP that we're committed to, but also how do we strengthen multi-agency working, because I think fair to say, and we all recognise this, that all of the work around cost of living is fantastic in terms of what individual partners are delivering, but how do we make that more powerful and impactful by identifying where we could join some of it up a bit more. So that's one of the issues that we will be exploring in the workshop. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Fiona. If there are no further questions on that report, we will move on to Fiona again for the next paper.
Thank you. I will try and cover this quickly so that we can finish by 11. It is a brief update just on the current inquiry into community planning, or more specifically part 2 of the Community Empowerment Act, which came into force in 2015, and section 2 of the Act deals with community planning. So this was discussed briefly at the last board meeting, I think. Perth and Kinross Council was asked to put a response into the inquiry, which we have done. That was submitted to our Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee back in January, so that committee could scrutinise it and make any comments. And I can see from the Parliament website, Veronica, that Perth College UHI also submitted a response, as did a number of community planning colleagues at either national or local level. We have been asked, following our response, to give evidence to one of the inquiry hearings, which is on the 7th of March, which Lee Haxton and I will attend. And just briefly to cover some of the issues that we highlighted in our response, we talked about the quality of partnership working at a local level and the development of the local action partnerships. Whilst the LAPs will be reviewed over the course of this year by the Council, we also flagged up pilot work in Kinross Shire with a new local area committee, which Councillor Cuthbert has just taken up the convenership of. We gave some tangible examples of where the CPP has tackled inequality, all of which I won't rehearse because I think pretty much everybody around this table is familiar with those. We outlined some of the challenges to making community planning work in a meaningful way. Again, I won't rehearse all of those, but happy to take any questions on them. The inquiry is asking if changes in legislation or guidance would be useful to strengthen community planning. My view on that, and this is a personal view, colleagues, is probably not, because actually this is about relationships and the will to work together. And finally, we were also asked if the number of statutory community planning partners in terms of the legislation should be amended, and we made a couple of suggestions about that. So that's an overview of the inquiry, but happy to pick up any questions afterwards, Chair, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks very much, Fiona. And I'll just open it up to questions for Fiona. Dave.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, just quick ones. On page 14, there's reference to the role of SG Place /location directors. I wasn't quite sure who they were or what they were. Is that directors of the various bodies?
Fiona?
Yeah, sorry, that term refers to, and it's not that clear, Councillor Cuthbert, apologies for that. So that is Scottish Government Location Directors, which is basically means every director or an equivalent senior officer in Scottish Government, senior official in Scottish Government, is the lead contact for at least one community planning partnership in Scotland, in some cases two. So our location director in Scottish Government is Dougie McLaren, who's not here this morning but has attended previous meetings, and their role is to be our kind of broker, if you like, into Scottish Government, help troubleshoot any issues or overcome any barriers that we as a CPP have in terms of our dialogue with Scottish Government, and generally be helpful to us in terms of national context. These roles have existed for a very long time. Councillor Cuthbert, I was involved in shaping, some of the aspects of their role when I was in SG, and they are quite variable, I think, in terms of how they've operated nationally, but Scottish Government is keen to make that role more consistent, I think, going into the future.
You happy with the response, Dave? Of course, on you go.
Okay, next one's quick as well. I was just wondering if I could see a copy of the, what's it called? The report that was done. Where are we? It's on page 15, I think. The thematic review of the role played by CLD in Perth and Kinross. I was wondering if I could see a copy of that, possibly.
It's on, I think it's on the Audit Scotland website, Councillor Cuthbert, the Education Scotland website, but we'll send you the link and a copy of the report.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on the report? No, thank you. Thank you, Fiona. The next topic heading is the council budget, and could talk all day about the problems of trying to form one and what we're doing. So I'm really happy to say that it's very nearly 11 o'clock. So I'll stop now and we'll just give a brief update of what I can share or willing to share just straight after the minute silence. I will tell you when that starts, just according to my phone, which may or may not be the correct time. Okay, that's 11 o'clock, so we'll have a minute's silence. Thank you very much. That's thanks everybody for observing that minute silence for the people of Ukraine on both sides of that war that are suffering just now. The budget position obviously is extremely difficult, maybe not as bad as we were expecting back in October when we started on the process, and the council, with its new corporate plan and its aims and ambitions, that we're looking for a lot of transformation. We're looking to try and deliver the same services, maybe better for less money, by transformation in a lot of areas. Sort of coming out of the sort of one council estate and a one council organisation, rather than being in different services which don't interact with each other in the best way possibly. It's to make it more modern and agile way of working. What we can say is that we can't respond to demand anymore as a local authority. We have to respond to need. So, because people demand a lot of services, some of which is for personal demand or is a nice thing to do. I'm afraid we'll be moving towards more of following where need is, and we'll be looking, and we'll try and support all our partners around here. And I think we showed our commitment last year by putting in about over £1 million during the year after the budget towards the Anti-Poverty Task Force, Cost of Living Crisis, Financial Inclusion Fund, Insecurity Fund. Fifth is easier. I can't even remember what it was, but to put in the fifth fund, and we will continue to do that. Have to say that every time there was an ask from officers to or a motion to put money into Anti-Poverty Task Force or anything, it was cross-party. Each political group supported it. There was never any dissension amongst the members of the council, and hopefully, well, I'm sure that will continue. And the budget that we put forward as administration, and I'll say it again on Wednesday, will be an administration budget, but none of us would imagine that we have the monopoly of ideas or the best way to move forward. And we have spoken to other groups, and even on the day, if anybody comes forward with proposals that we think are better than ours or more effective, I'll be quite happy to adopt them into our budget, because it's gone beyond the stage, I think, of just political arguments within the council. Now, I think we can have our political disagreements outside the chamber, but I think all of us that are members, elected members here, are now moving to continue to do the best for all our residents. So it's just to let you know that that's the way that I'm approaching it, and I think that you should take comfort that all the political leaders are engaged in trying to come at some consensual outcomes that are the best for our residents with the funding we've got. And I'm afraid everything else will be really revealed next Wednesday, because I don't want to. The papers are already out, and there's a lot of things in there that people that work for the organisation will be extremely worried about the outcomes. So I don't want to go into any more detail till the decision's taken by council. So that's a PKC overview of where we are. Does anybody else have any good news on their budgetary position that they want to share, or anything in their budget that they would like to share with other partners? Emma?
No, I'm not going to go into the detail. I mean, all the financial predicament that is being faced across our whole economy UK-wide, and the impact that that's having on all organisations. And the NHS Tayside position was outlined at the board yesterday. I think my only reflections in my role as a Director of Public Health is the challenge that we are all going to face to continue to carve out funding towards a preventative approach, because it is so easy for us all to as you've outlined, react to demand, but also the pressures that are there and current. And if we are going to continue to build sustainable health, social care, all services going forward, we really, I would encourage everyone to not take the eye off a preventative and early intervention approach, but it's going to be incredibly difficult in the financial circumstances for everyone.
Thanks, Emma. Anybody else want to comment? Any other politicians wanting to comment on how well they're getting on with their budget? No, quite wise. I'm happy to see you still smiling there, John. So if there's no other comments on the budget, we'll just move on to the. I don't see that there's any other AOCB being raised prior to the meeting, but do we have any AOCB that anybody wants to bring up after hearing the topics we've had today? No. Okay, thanks. Well, the next meeting's scheduled for the 21st of April. We are looking to see if any of the other partners wish to host the meeting. And if anybody does, I'm sure if they can get in touch with Lee or David or one of the council team, we'll be happy to go wherever somebody wants to host it. And if not, we can be back here in the chamber on the 21st of April. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending and thanks for your input and also thanks for the continuing good work that each sector's doing. So thank you.